This is delicious beer, Alice. Oh my goodness. This is Newburyport. This is Newburyport Brewing Company.
Mm-hmm.
Lighthouse Lemon Lime Ghost. What is Ghost? Some jerky name. It's delicious, though. Nice. So, what can I tell you today, Alice Shattuck? I have a question for you. I was thinking about the situation in Ukraine. So it looks like the operation itself, the operation has failed.
The Russian operation.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're beating the crap out of Mariupol and
Mariupol,
some other places. They're just shelling to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And it's awful. The accounts are terrible.
And just basically saying, if you want us to stop, then give us this.
But they're not quitting.
Right.
And they are determined. The determination and the resolution. Resolution?
Sure, resolution.
The resolve is all on Ukraine's
That's a good one,
side.
yeah.
Resolve is on Ukraine's side. And so they're continuing to get up armored, and they're getting more goodies, and they're beating the crap out of all the Russian vehicles are getting just waxed. These people they're giving the Russians hell to the point where they're hemorrhaging money now in equipment, in lives now.
Mm-hmm.
All the counts are different, whatever. But if they say even if it's 5,000 people, that is a catastrophic loss and situation that they're in now. So my feeling is this: we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do NATO and go do a no-fly zone, because then we're going to get in firefights with Russian planes, and we're not going to have NATO troops on the ground because if we do that, then he's got nukes and he could just say F this, since his back is against the wall. But as it stands now, Putin is in a situation where he can't pull out.
Right.
If he pulls out, it's Vladimir Putin assumes room temperature very quickly. So he's got to try to do something to win. So why wouldn't he use a nuke now? Why wouldn't that be the next thing you do? And so we're worried about him using nukes if we tick him off. Isn't that one of the last things left on the board for him to do?
I mean, sure, I guess so. Like, I think that's what people have kind of been saying all along, too, is like, this is not a guy who you like what he does once you back him into a corner. Right? And he's vicious, and he doesn't care about human life, and he's going to do what he thinks he needs to do to get a win. And I really, I think that is what's so dangerous about this situation. The truth is also that, even though this is clearly not how they wanted this to go, the Russians, like, they can keep throwing stuff at this. Like, clearly what's happening in Mariupol and other places, but I mean, I think most famously there was a big, I think it was an AP piece out today about the reporters there and how they were targeted by Russian lists and just the terrible humanitarian travesty that is happening in Mariupol, where they're not letting relief trucks in and they're not letting people escape. And I mean, like, it's really hideous what's going on. And, Russia might not be able to keep this up forever, and they might be taking heavy losses while they keep it up, but it's also horrific for the people that live there, So I think that's where this becomes difficult for the Ukrainians. And yeah, I mean, from Putin's perspective, does it speed things along and limit his losses in getting the Ukrainians to come to some sort of agreement with him to give some stuff up if he uses a nuke? The next question is, does the world let him use a nuke and walk away with, like, the winnings of that gamble or not? Right? Mm-hmm. Because that obviously raises this conflict to a new level that has not been seen since World War II, which and would be even probably greater than we've seen in World War II, because there's been advances in weaponry since that time. Obviously, the Russians are also going to say the Ukrainians did the nuke.
Yeah.
They got their hands on some lost nuke, and they set it off to make us look bad. That's going to be what they're going to say. But
But
does the world do something about the nuke or not?
That's the question. Does the world do something about the nuke or not? Because he will have proven categorically
that he's willing to use nukes.
Exactly. So, do we dare go engage him? Send the Americans over there? Do we have to look? We're near Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant where we are, Alice. You and I get the fire, I believe, from here. And I mean, once he's willing to use a nuke, and that just goes to the need that he needs an off-ramp, but there's no off-ramp. The off-ramp for Russia, for the benefit of Russia, is a withdrawal, and even a negotiated withdrawal. Could have some verbiage about the UN, NATO, whatever. But what's in Russia's best interest is not in Putin's best interest.
Right.
So, and as a guy who likes killing people, I'm sure that he is plenty paranoid and knows that there are others like him saying, you know what, maybe the old man has lost his grip here. And, I mean, this is such a dangerous position to be in right now. This is not like with in the 80s with Gorbachev, with perestroika, which is the reformation of the government from within. It was in Russia. It was patriotic. Perestroika was patriotic. Because you needed a reformation of the Soviet Union. You needed a different business model. Among other things, the Yanks were bankrupting them.
Right. Because
they had to, if they were in a Cold War with us, and they had to try to match spending, and they couldn't do it. But, I mean, that was different. And I'm sure, actually, that Putin hated perestroika. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it. But like this is a dangerous thing because he's running out of. I mean, I guess maybe he'd go to gas before nukes.
Yeah, or whatever bioweapons definitely aren't in any biolabs in Ukraine, kind of thing.
Right, I guess.
I mean, I guess that's an earlier option, but yeah, I mean, the more desperate he gets, the more dangerous the situation gets for the Ukrainians who are still in Ukraine. Obviously, if you look at what's going on in the cities that Russia is attacking right now. The longer this drags out and the more desperate Putin gets, the uglier the situation becomes and the more dramatic this stuff is that the Russians are doing. I mean, there's all kinds of reports. Who knows what's true and what's not? There's certainly reports that Russian troops are going around with lists grabbing people. There's reports that they're grabbing people and sending them to camps in Russia. I mean, like, it's very hard to know what the situation is, and whatever it is, it's definitely not good. The sooner this ends, the better for everybody. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it unfolds from here. And I don't think that anybody does, except maybe Putin knows what comes next from Putin's perspective. But yeah, I mean, I assume all the world leaders have to be asking themselves these questions. Like, if he does biological or chemical weapons, is that a red line? If he uses a nuke, is that a red line? What if it's just a mini nuke, like one of these tactical nuclear weapons? Like, is that still count? Or is that just, like the way it goes on the battlefield? There's been debate about using those for many years, and like whether that really counts as using nukes or not. But we're in for the, I would say, maybe I'm wrong, but I would say for like the post World War II era, we're really like in uncharted territory at this point. I mean, maybe you feel different. Maybe like Vietnam or Korea or something else it seemed more precarious for the world. But this seems like really, to me, at least in my lifetime, this sort of tipping point.
So as a kid who grew up in the 80s, amidst all the 80s movies about us being nuked,
right?
From War Games to what was it? Not the Longest Day. Anyway, maybe it wasn't The Longest Day. No.
Was there one that was like
there was
the day after or something like that?
Something like that. Well,
that's the climate change one, I think. But
there was
but there was something like that.
There was one in about 83 that was showed everything what would happen if there was nukes and everybody, and back then, as a kid, we didn't care about. It was unbelievable to us. We didn't care. And I just talked to one of my friends over the weekend who said he was worried. I was like, really? You cared? We didn't care about nukes. Now it seems more real to me than it was then.
Right.
That it could happen. It just seemed then you were at such an impasse. It was a standoff back then. Two big, mighty powers in mutually assured destruction made no sense. Now it seems more likely. Because now this guy's got his own interests. And it may be just a madman. Now
right, and he's got a little country that he can bully with the chance that the big powers don't want to be involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I don't think China's going to do anything to stop him, right?
What would be one of the things that happens that makes us move to Vermont?
Down here becomes a nuclear wasteland?
No, I understand that, Alice. I think that would be a pretty good reason to move. Yes.
I don't know.
But before that, what are the things that would happen with this conflict that would have us just operate out of Vermont?
If he used a nuke, would you go to Vermont
Alice,
then? I don't know. I'm wondering. I don't know what you're driving
if a nuke's going
at.
to hit Seabrook, New Hampshire, and we can see it, then we'll move, Alice.
Okay, what are you trying to...
What about if there's a no-fly zone?
Then would you move to Vermont?
I'm asking you.
I mean, I'd move to Vermont today, but I don't know.
I'll try this with somebody else.
I don't
Looking
get
at this woman's Facebook post today from Mariupol. A young woman says, I go out on the street during breaks between bombs. I need to walk the dog. She's constantly sneezing, shaking, and hiding behind my feet. Which totally makes sense because dogs don't like fireworks. Because they're not going to like missile strikes. I always want to sleep. My yard, surrounded by many stories, is quiet and dead. I am no longer afraid to look around. Opposite the entrance of the 150 house, the flame devoured 5 floors and slowly chews the 6th. The fire in the room burns neatly like a fireplace. Black tiled windows stand without glass. From them, the tongues, like tongues, curtains fall out of them, and I look calmly at, and I look at this calmly and cursed. I'm sure I'm going to die soon. That's a matter of days. In this city, everyone is constantly waiting for death. I just wish she wasn't so scary. 3 days ago, a friend of my oldest nephew visited us and told us that it was a direct hit on the fire department. The rescuers have lost their lives. One woman's hand, leg, and head tore off. I dream of my body parts staying still, even after an air bomb blast. I don't know why, but I think this is important. Although, on the other hand, there will still be no burial during combat. This is how the police responded to us when we caught them on the street and asked what to do with our friend's dead grandmother. They advised to put it on the balcony. I wonder how many balconies are dead bodies lying on. Our house on Myra Avenue, it's an interesting, they've got a Myra Avenue, is the only one without direct hits. He was hit, her pronouns are a little whacked. He was hit by shells twice. Glass flew out in some apartments.
That's probably because the words have gender in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah, but he was hardly injured and looks lucky compared to other houses. The whole yard is covered with a few layers of ash, glass, plastic, and metal shackles. Me trying not to look at the iron fool flying into the playground. Not sure what she means. I think it's a rocket, or maybe it's gone. I don't care. It's just uncomfortable. In the 3rd floor window, I see someone's face, and it's chasing me. Turns out I'm afraid of living people. My dog is starting to howl, and I understand they're going to shoot again now. I'm standing outside during the day, and there's a cemetery silence around me. There are no cars, no voices, no children, no grandmothers on the benches. Even the wind is dead. A few people on here, though. I assume she means Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
They are... Oh, no, it's not. They are lying on the side of the house and in the parking lot covered with upper clothes. I don't want to look at them. I'm afraid I'll see someone I know. All life in my city is now mumbling in the basements. She looks out like a candle in our ward. There's nothing to do to put her out. Any vibration or wind in darkness will come. I try to cry, but I can't. I feel sorry for myself, my family, my husband, my neighbors, friends. I go back to the basement and listen to a nasty iron cross there. I don't know what this means. It's been 2 weeks and I can't believe there was once another life. People continue to sit in the basement in Mariupol. Every day it's harder for them to survive. They have no water, food, light. They can't even go outside because of constant shelling. Mariupol residents must live. Help them out. Tell them about it. Let everyone know that the killing of peaceful people continue. So that's just some woman who a reporter found her Facebook post.
Yeah.
That I thought, It is interesting because
Yeah.
if you've got nothing, then all you can do, if you don't have food and water, and all you can do is just wait.
It is crazy to think about doing something as normal as continuing to go out and walk your dog. Isn't it a little funny? Like, just, I guess the dog still needs to be walked. It might be the apocalypse and everybody's dead around
Yeah.
you and bombs are falling on the buildings left and right. But your dog still needs to go out and walk. So you just get up and walk the dog in between bombings. Like, it's sort of surreal. But yeah, it's terrible. And that's what I mean when I say, like, when there's all this narrative that the war's going so badly for Putin and for Russia, and like, I think that that's true compared to where they thought they would be. It's also going worse for these people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if it's just a question of who can last this out longer, I think it might be Putin. You know, because at some point, like, all the people are going to...
What is that? Okay, it stopped.
The people who are still alive are going to... I mean, like, what's the point? It just... I don't know who wins in this. Obviously nobody wins in this, but yeah, when you read and hear things like that, and you see Facebook posts, especially like I saw one the other day. I think I showed you that was like a mom and her son, and it was like this reporter found graves with their names on them, and so like Google looked for them on Facebook, right? And found the mom on Facebook and a kid the same name and the right age, and found like pictures of them, you know, like last summer hanging out like in the city streets in Kyiv. That was normal, and it's so like surreal and weird. It's terrible. I mean, it's a horror movie, really. And I'm going to say
something that sounds very, very naive, but. And I'm going to say it anyway, even though it's so simplistic, and it's just so unnecessarily mean and cruel.
Yeah.
Like this is not a necessary thing. These are not two countries that have declared war either.
Right.
This is one country just going in and destroying lives.
Right.
Without regard, women, children, men, women, kids, pets. Because that particular madman, it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So the Supreme Court thing is going. I care very little about it, but I am intrigued by this.
She's gonna probably end up on the Supreme
Yeah.
Court. I mean,
she seems nice. I don't care really.
Fortunately, Clarence Thomas seems to be doing better. They're gonna release him supposedly in the next couple days.
No, let me play this. This is Mazie Hirono talking today during the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing.
Some of my Republican colleagues and public figures have attempted to undermine your qualifications through their pejorative use of the term affirmative action. And they have implied you were solely nominated due to your race and not for other factors. Apparently, some have even claimed that you need to show your LSAT scores to determine whether you are a top legal mind.
Some have implied that you were solely nominated due to your race. I don't know. That's what we were told by Joe Biden, that he was getting...
When he listed his qualifications for Supreme Court justice, he said black and a woman. So that's where that came from. It wasn't... Republicans didn't make this up out of nowhere.
Right.
This is incredibly offensive and condescending. Let me be clear. Your nomination is not about filling a quota.
Not at all.
It's not? Because the guy just told us it's about filling a quota. And that's why it's historic. This is so beautiful for this administration to be saying.
It is about time. It's about time that we have a highly qualified, highly accomplished black woman on the Supreme Court.
Huh? But it's not about race and it's not about filling a quota. But we need to fill a quota.
But yeah, we need a black woman on the Supreme Court.
Right. But she didn't say the most qualified person on the country.
We really need a great progressive legal scholar on the Supreme Court. She said we need... How dare they say that we're only nominating somebody because they're a black woman? We need a black woman on the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
It's about time our highest court better reflects the country it serves.
These people are effing nuts.
It's about time that Black women and girls across the country can finally see themselves who look like them sitting on the highest court, making decisions that will impact their lives.
Oh, man, you play with race and you're in an uglier world that you've created for yourself.
How come there have been no Serbians on the Supreme Court?
I
I demand to see myself.
I don't see all too many Asians, and I believe that Asians are being beat on.
Right. So maybe those little girls need to see themselves
No.
on the Supreme Court. I don't know. It's really crazy. The left is nuts. And for them to, in the same breath, be doing this with Ketanji Brown Jackson, talking about how, like, these attacks on her are racist or whatever. Like, they've accused a bunch of people of racism now, for Josh Hawley in particular, Marsha Blackburn, for, criticizing some of her legal decisions and saying she's too soft on crime or whatever. Which I don't know if I have that strong feelings on. She's a liberal. They're going to nominate a liberal. Like, it is what it is. She's replacing a liberal. It's not that big a deal. But that being said, for them to accuse everybody of racism in the same breath in which they're turning around and saying that it's great that Clarence Thomas is dying because he's mean and they don't like him.
Who was that guy? Do we know him?
I don't know. You're the one who brought it up last night on our Patreon show. We talked a little. Tom was reading
but this
some
guy
tweets from
right
some
here.
people
No, that was Dan Savage that I had. But is this Dan Savage here? No, this is Turtle Enigmatic. Here's another guy who's thrilled.
This just in. Clarence Thomas has been hospitalized with pneumonia. Yes! It's gonna be a good day. Hopefully. Hopefully he dies. I mean, just kidding. But, like, hopefully we get another Supreme Court.
Seems very normal and okay. I mean, the left loves RGB, and she's obviously a big progressive and everything. I don't really remember there being any videos of conservatives acting like that about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, even when she did die.
Correct.
I don't think anybody behaved that way. I know they think that we're thinking it because that's how they feel about us, but it's all projection with them. They hate us and want us to die, so they always assume that we just hate them and want them to die. They hate you because you're a white person, so they assume you're hating someone because they're a black person. That's how they operate. They are terrible, small-minded, angry people deep down, so they assume everyone is that way.
Remarkable. But he's got a cute little tight haircut and a right Izod shirt or whatever it is, and is dressed to the T's and lives in a nice loft apartment somewhere and has a Prius and has whatever. And so he feels like all my things are nice, so I must be nice too. Yeah. So it's nice for me to say, I hope somebody dies. Clarence Thomas, who I believe grew up during Jim Crow, I believe is a black man.
Yeah, and by the way, whose first language isn't even English.
Is that true?
Yes, he grew up speaking Gullah, also called Geechee, which is a dialect. They're not exactly sure, but it's like based on some West African languages and possibly related to Creole in some ways. But yeah, that's what he grew up speaking as his first language. It's one of the reasons he's like not as talkative. It is because he's been self-conscious in his past about his speaking. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. You would think there would be a lot of things that people could find interesting about Clarence Thomas if they decided to look into him and learn something about him. But no, one cannot, you're not allowed to like Clarence Thomas or find him interesting or be interested in his story. And if somebody, you see it even with, Tim Scott, right? When he shares his story about how his whatever great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather, whatever he shared, grew up picking cotton and how it was like cotton to Congress in 3 generations or whatever his story, and they fact-checked it. And we're like, he didn't really drop out of school in 3rd grade. It might have been 4th grade. We're not sure. It was crazy. The Washington Post fact-checker spent time fact-checking. Did they ever check into Elizabeth Warren's life story at all? No, 0. She got to claim to be an Indian. But, any black Republican is immediately subject to like the strictest scrutiny to make sure they really suffered enough and that they're really black enough and really share enough in black history. But you would think Clarence Thomas would be like if you were like actually interested in people of different backgrounds and life stories being on the Supreme Court, then you would be interested in Clarence Thomas, but obviously not. But I don't know. It's just one of those little things that makes me mad. But
what do you want to say? I mean, just watching this moment here.
I'm saving a special moment in this
Ketanji
introduction
Brown
for my daughters, Talia and Layla. Girls, I know it has not been easy as I've tried to navigate the challenges of juggling my career and motherhood. And I fully admit that I did not always get the balance right. But I hope that you've seen that with hard work, determination, and love, it can be done. I am so looking forward to seeing what each of you chooses to do with your amazing lives in this incredible country. I love you so much.
So it's a very sweet thing she just said. Her daughters are back there, and it's nice. Whatever.
yeah.
Remember, these very same good people, good Democrats, were happy to destroy Kavanaugh with his daughter sitting behind him. Destroy him. Destroy what to her is the purest form of paternal influence and love in the world is her dad. They were happy to call him leader of a sex traffic ring, rapist, etc. Based on some psycho chick who knows nothing about anything, who has zero credibility.
Right. And lunatics like Sheldon Whitehouse are sitting here going like, how dare Josh Hawley politicize this by talking about her judicial record and saying she's soft on crime. These personal attacks must stop. We must not, politicize the Supreme Court process. How dare you? Oh, you mean like making up whole cloth this crazy conspiracy theory and dragging every criminal grifter they could find who would repeat insane talking points about secret gang rape rings and like absolutely mental. Like anybody who looked at it could see that this was absolutely insane character attacks by people who were either like just needed mental help, like Julie Swetnick or possibly Christine Blasey Ford, or were absolutely just looking for cash in the lowest possible way, like Michael Avenatti, who CNN had on in seriousness, and like people were seriously saying needed to be brought in to testify before Congress, who had nothing to do with anything. It was just starting trouble over nothing. It was insane world. And for them, for them now to act as though, and I do actually think that we should, dial back the process a little and try and rein this back in. And people should not accuse Ketanji Brown Jackson of running gang rape rings in high school. Like, I think that we should, that should not become the norm because it kind of sucks for our country, frankly. And it's not healthy. And I mean, there's a bunch of people still walking around who believe
those
that.
sons of bitches, those Democrats who did that, should be drummed out of public service forever. They should be castigated and scorned forever, and their graves should frigging reflect the disgusting, bottom-feeding scum that they are. Forever. And for them to say, now we're doing a January 6th committee. It's like, F you, dude. You are frigging scum.
I know, the most unserious people on planet Earth. And obviously anybody who had Avenatti on their TV show should not be allowed to seriously be in the media business anymore. Was he on The View at one point? I think he was on The View, and Brian Stelter had him on. How can any network seriously have these people on anymore as they're sitting here taking seriously this guy's presidential run and these stories and et cetera? It's incredible. It really is. And I realize like people on the right have gotten flack for some of the things that some of the wilder theories about the 2020 election and for giving airtime to people who were floating stuff that turned out not to be true. But, the left routine, like those people for the most part are no longer in the business and no longer taken seriously. The people who floated things like that and who took seriously people who floated things like that. To his credit, do you remember Tucker wouldn't have on Sydney or asked to have on Sidney Powell and she wouldn't come on because like he questioned her narrative or claimed something wasn't true or something. Do you remember that? And she wouldn't come on and defend it, or she couldn't provide him any of the evidence he asked for, and then she wouldn't come on and explain herself. And Tucker like didn't really take her seriously because those were unserious people. And for the most part, our party treated them unseriously, and people who took them seriously aren't any longer seriously running around doing stuff. Like Rudy Giuliani is no longer holding any office of public trust, right? Like Sheldon Whitehouse, who acted like an insane man with the Brett Kavanaugh stuff, is still in the Senate. Like, how is this allowed to be this way? Their party lets the nut jobs continue to be there. You know, I feel like the Republican Party has done a much better job, and this is not the narrative you'll hear in the mainstream media, but I feel like for the most part, the Republican Party has done a much better job, you know, cleaning house, and people who say and do things that they don't back up with facts, they aren't taken seriously anymore, you know? So, I don't know. That's just my feeling. But yeah, but I think on the left, the lunatics are just running the asylum. I found this incredible Twitter thread today. This is from Dr. Cherie Becker. I don't know where she's a doctor. She's not an actual doctor. She's an assistant professor. She, her. But I don't know what she's a doctor of, but not medicine, obviously, because that would be the normal thing you would be. Anyway, but Dr. Cherie Becker says, I've been hearing more frequently the narrative that women's sports apparently exists as a protected category so women can win, because without that, no woman will ever win again. That is not the reason why women's sports exist as a category. Do you want to guess why she thinks women's sports exist?
I have no idea.
Let me continue.
Racism?
No. It is not true that women will never win again. This narrative is profoundly paternalistic and keeps women small. Let's unpack this a little.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Stakeholders is coming. Oh, God.
Women's sports exist as a category because the dominance of male athletes was threatened by women competing.
Oh, I see. We had to house them somewhere
Women
else to
were
stop
gonna
being getting embarrassed.
Men's sports is the protected
That's too
category.
good. That's
Men's
too good.
sports is the protected category. We see this over and over again. In figure skating in 1902, Madge Syers entered the world champs and came back second. There was no rule preventing her, though no woman had ever entered before. 1903, women banned from the world champs. 1905, segregated women's category.
I believe that this case is airtight.
Exhibit A2, that incredibly athletic sport, skeet shooting. 1992, Barcelona. Zhang Sheng wins the gold medal. The event had always been an open event, no gendered categories. 1996, Atlanta, women banned from shooting. 2000, Sydney, segregated women's category, fewer targets for women. Exhibit A3, football, by which I believe she means
Soccer? Okay.
I think she's British. Women's football, 1920, thriving in the UK with 53,000 strong crowds. Men had been off fighting in World War I. 1921, women's football banned. Men had returned from World War I. 50 years later, 1971, the ban is lifted and women's football is still recovering. More examples exist, but the pattern is clear. Wherever women were included, it was only when they started threatening men's dominance and entitlement that we were segregated into a separate category. Surprisingly, she didn't do, wrestling, running, swimming, anything where there's like the strong, skeet shooting. Yes. It's crazy. Women's inclusion was on the terms of those in power. They didn't want women taking opportunities away from men, so they segregated the women. It was never about a benevolent and still sexist aim of supposedly giving women a chance to win. It was about control. And the narrative about women being inherently physically inferior to men, concocted as a reason to segregate us without threatening masculinity. There are once again actually greater fears here that women may start to challenge men's dominance more broadly. Aha. So she goes on here with more exhibits, including surfing. Mm-hmm. Women are starting to dominate men in surfing, shooting. Yes. So she goes on. So, I guess she's making the case almost that we don't need women's sports as a category at all. Which I think would really put everybody's money where their mouth is.
Well, the only problem is it'll be the end of all men in competition.
Of course, because the women will dominate. What are they going to do when all the marathon winners are all women? And no men can compete anymore.
Right.
That's why they have women's. I forgot.
So then,
that.
why?
Sorry.
What is the reason that Leah Thomas's competition keeps throwing the matches in his favor? Why don't they just easily crush him?
Well, as they're quick to point out, Leah Thomas still hasn't broken the world record for any of these events, and still, gets beat in some other events where it's not like his primary competitive event. So, and clearly, like, a lot of girls could beat you at swimming.
Whoa.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so they use this sort of muddled talking point where it's like, well, lots of girls swim faster than lots of boys. What's the difference? As though there's not like two bell curves that overlap each other.
Right.
And like when you get way out at the end, there's only one winning, and even though you have like the huge mass of the bell curve is all mixed together and there's people that are good and bad at everything, right? Like they like to use this stuff and sort of make it confusing if you haven't like thought about it very hard, and you're like, well, men are bigger and stronger, and they're like, well, there's men that are shorter than you. Are you better than them at swimming automatically? Like, it doesn't, but none of that means anything. Because we're talking about averages. Obviously, men are better than women at sports, but it's funny because I remember talking to somebody I know who's like, who's more or less liberal a few years ago. And we were at like the Museum of Science, and there was some exhibit about like men's and women's bodies and like the human body exhibit. And I said something like, don't tell the trans activists or something. And they were like, well, obviously no one's making the case there's like not actually biological differences. And I was like, on the bleeding edge, they are absolutely making that case, and wait and see, because that's coming. It absolutely is. And that's what they're really trying to like mix this up and like make it seem like you're confused or don't know what you're talking about. Hence the guy at the pool with the woman who said like, well, are you a biologist? Like, you don't understand like how deep this actually is. Very complicated and nuanced. Like, who's to say? This is very subtle. But it's actually not, though. And the woman who says, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is actually right. Like, this is simpler than they're making it. And your initial gut reaction that men are better than sports because men are better than sports is actually right. I presume, for example, that women are allowed in the NBA.
I would assume if...
And I would assume that women are allowed in the NFL. Right?
I would assume, yeah.
It's not like... if there was like a woman who was a fantastic quarterback, like better than Tom Brady, someone would draft her, right?
Of course.
Like, they want to win games and make money and all that stuff, so they would. But, so the idea then that this is like some plot against women, that women aren't in these sports, and that actually like the only reason is because women would just actually destroy all the men, is so insane. But that's like what they do. They don't just like try and argue with your point. They make up a completely insane point that's like so backwards and out of the blue that you like don't even know how to begin to argue with that.
All that's important are important firsts, and I'd like to talk about one right now, including the important first female vice president that we have. Kamala loses her 10th staffer since June. VP's national security advisor, Nancy McEldowney, joins staff exodus after a widely criticized trip to Poland and Romania. She'll be succeeded by Philip Gordon, yada yada. She said she's stepping down to focus on pressing personal matters. And so there we go. She is done. No more Kamala. No more...
I can't think why. That trip went so well.
It's interesting, though. It's like, hopefully they're not blaming her. It's not her that the dummy doesn't study anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's no way. She's provided with all the briefing documents everybody's provided with. She could know this stuff. She's obviously like, I think that, I tend to think it's less that she's dumb and more that she's lazy.
Yes.
You know, I think that she's smart enough to have realized that she could coast by without doing much for much of her life and is not about to start doing stuff like working hard now. I think she's actually probably a pretty intelligent woman. Like, she speaks like she's intelligent, you know, but she just doesn't want to put the work in. She doesn't want to know anything at this point in her life. She wants to go to fancy parties and get invited to stuff and be historic and not really have to do the job. Unfortunately.
Totally.
I mean, listen, guys. We're talking about the potential for war in Europe. I mean, let's really take a moment to understand the significance of what we're talking about. It's been over 70 years. And through those 70 years, as I mentioned yesterday, there has been peace and security. We are talking about the real possibility of war in Europe.
My goodness, what a powerhouse. My goodness.
Thank you so much for joining us again, everybody. I'm about to head to the movies.
Oh, anything you want to disclose? No?
No?
Okay.
I'm about to head to the movies, but you can talk to us as usual on Twitter at BurnBarrelPod, BurnBarrelPodcast.com, BurnBarrelPodcast@gmail.com, Facebook.com/BurnBarrelPodcast. We also have video channels on YouTube, on Rumble, and you can find the audio version of the show anywhere you like to listen to podcasts.